84.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and 1 p.m. in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM. First, the headlines. Niger's deposed President Bazoum's term officially ends today as he remains in detention following the 2023 coup. Civil society in Guinea-Bissau condemns the alleged murder of activist Balanta.
We learnt of this with great dismay. From our perspective, it was a brutal execution.
Nigerian President Tinubu orders reinforcement of security measures in Plateau State following renewed violence. And public outrage in Liberia as President Boakai nominates a new electoral chief, Wadr.
We do not trust or the appointment of General K. Wadr because we believe that that man has already been compromised.
Our concern is around his independence, his neutrality.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Imo Edit.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We'll begin in Niger, where deposed President Mohamed Bazoum's term officially ends today, April 2, 2026. Bazoum has remained in detention in Niamey since he was overthrown in a military coup on July 26, 2023. Despite repeated calls from human rights organizations and civil society groups for his release, those efforts have yet to yield results. Augustin Kohli explains the details.
Mohamed Bazoum's political career had already been shaken by an attempted coup on March 31, 2021, 2 days before his inauguration. 2 years later, he was finally ousted by the military which seized power in Niamey. Several diplomatic attempts have been made without success to secure his release. Efforts have been made by countries such as Togo and Morocco, while an international collective published an open letter in December 2025 calling for urgent action from international actors to obtain his release. In March 2026, the European Parliament adopted a resolution calling for the release of Mohamed Bazoum before the official end of his term. However, this initiative was strongly criticized by several member states of a regional organization who saw it as interference in Niger's internal affairs. None of the public efforts to secure his release has so far succeeded. Mohamed Bazoum's immunity was lifted 2 years ago, but no formal legal proceedings have been initiated. As for the ruling military committee, it remains silent on the former president's personal situation in its public communications.
Augustin Kohli filed a report on the diplomatic front, Ghana and Zimbabwe, because both countries are focusing on expanding trade, boosting industrialization, and advancing Africa-led development. This renewed direction emerged during a state banquet hosted by President John Dramani Mahama for Zimbabwean leader Emerson Mnangagwa, who is on a 3-day state visit to Ghana. Both leaders highlighted the need to convert long-standing historical relations into practical economic cooperation, particularly in areas that can drive growth and job creation. From Accra, Nadi Detete reports.
At the state banquet in Accra, Presidents Mahama and Mnangagwa outlined a shared interest in deepening economic engagement between Ghana and Zimbabwe. President Mahama noted that relations between the two countries date back to liberation struggles and said the focus should now be on building partnerships that deliver measurable development outcomes.
Tonight is not merely ceremonial, it is a celebration of a relationship shaped by history and that is enriched by shared experiences and sustained by genuine human connections.
President Mnangagwa, on his part, emphasized the importance of increasing trade and strengthening private sector collaboration between the two countries. He pointed to the African Continental Free Trade Area as a key framework for enhancing intra-African trade and improving market access. The Zimbabwean leader also stressed the need for industrialization and value addition, particularly in sectors such as agriculture and mining. He further called for African countries to define their own development priorities and align partnerships accordingly. accordingly.
We, the citizens of our countries, Zimbabwe, Ghana, and Africa, have a duty and responsibility to develop, to modernize and industrialize our countries and the African continent ourselves. Partners and investors, well-wishers and others can only assist and complement our own efforts, based, however, on our own defined priorities, our own goals and our own vision. To never import foreign goals, import foreign vision into our countries.
Both leaders also identified opportunities for cooperation in areas including agriculture, education, tourism, and mining, with an emphasis on practical partnerships between businesses. President Mnangagwa also acknowledged Ghana's role in Zimbabwe's liberation struggle, describing it as a foundation for continued cooperation.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for inviting me to visit your great country. Engagements at this highest level are critically important to give impetus to the shared goals and targets we have set for ourselves for the maximum benefits for our peoples.
For WEDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
In Guinea-Bissau, there is a growing controversy and public outcry following the death of a civil society activist, Vigario Louis Balanta. Balanta's lifeless body was found on the outskirts of the capital, Bissau, days after he went missing. The late activist was known as a vocal critic of the transitional authorities. As Christopher Teacher reports, his family and friends are calling for an investigation to determine those responsible.
Vigario Luis Balata, a 35-year-old activist in Guinea-Bissau, was known to be outspoken and critical of the military transition since the coup last November. Following his abduction, the lifeless body of the leader of the citizens' movement was found on Tuesday. The Guinea-Bissau League for Human Rights denounces what it calls a summary execution and calls for an investigation. Boubacar Touré is the organization's president.
We learned of this with great dismay. From our perspective, it was a brutal execution. He was abducted and executed brutally by the armed men. To this day, no one knows who this criminal group was or who ordered it. As a civil society organization, we are calling on the government to urgently open an investigation to identify and bring to justice those responsible for this criminal act.
The Guinea-Bissau League for Human Rights says it has appealed to the United Nations to put pressure on the military authorities in Bissau.
We have activated the various United Nations mechanisms, the Special Rapporteurs on Brutal Executions, and also the Special Rapporteurs on Human Rights Defenders. Data was presented for those reports to help us put pressure on the government to shed light on this very serious case.
Furthermore, civil society organizations in Guinea-Bissau are denouncing a restriction of freedoms since the coup of November 26, 2025. As of now, there has been no official reaction from the government.
Christopher Tito filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Liberia, concerns have been raised over the integrity of the future of elections following the appointment of Jonathan Widow as acting chair of the Electoral Commission. President Joseph Boakai made the appointment after the resignation of the former head of the National Elections Commission. With the 2029 elections approaching, critics warn that any perception of bias could undermine public confidence, peace, and stability, while observers stress the need to maintain trust in the electoral process. WDR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The appointment has trickled widespread criticism from governance advocates, CSOs, and student movements. The civil society group Solidarity and Trust for a New Destined has called for the immediate withdrawal of Widow's appointment, warning that it poses a serious threat to the credibility and legitimacy of future elections. Adding to the pressure, Anosi Miami of the Center for Transparency and Accountability acknowledged the Wadr's professional competence but questioned his independence. For Robert Aslanda, a young Liberian advocate, the president should reconsider the appointment, emphasizing that Liberia has other qualified individuals with neutral public posturing.
Peace not be damaged for someone's political personal endorsement. We do not trust or the appointment or general care widow because we believe that men already been compromised. There are so many Liberians in this country that are qualified to be election commissioner, but you cannot take your kinsmen. This country does not belong to people of North Africa.
Similarly, the Student Unification Party SUP rejected the nomination and called on the Liberian Senate to block the appointment. The growing chorus of opposition highlights a critical test for Liberia's democratic institutions as stakeholders insist that safeguarding the independence and the credibility of the National Elections Commission is essential for national peace. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has held a high-level meeting with Plateau State Governor Caleb Mutfwang over the recent killings in the state. The meeting comes amid renewed violence in Jos North local government area, where at least 28 people were killed, prompting national concern and urgent calls for action. Usman Umar has more details in this report.
The meeting between President Bola Tinubu and Plateau State Governor Caleb Mutfwang is part of ongoing consultations to find lasting solutions to recurring violence in Plateau State. The president had earlier met security chiefs and summoned the governor to Abuja to assess the situation and coordinate a response. Governor Mutfwang briefed media after the meeting.
After the crisis, we convened a Security Council meeting. We've been able to agree on certain steps that we need to take, and the president has agreed. And so he has approved certain measures that we need to take further in conjunction with the security forces. This has become a decisive turning point that I'm sure going forward we're going to see more proactive action.
While the governor was in Abuja, reports emerged of fresh outbreaks of violence in parts of Jos with unconfirmed casualties.
Unfortunately, this morning there were some looters who tried to disrupt the peace again, but I'm glad that the security forces working together were able to calm the situation, and so presently the situation is well under calm.
President Tinubu is expected to visit Jos today to commiserate with the people and government of Plateau State following the recent deadly incident. The North Central State has faced nearly 2 decades of violence linked at various times to intercommunal conflict, ethnic tensions, farmer-herder clashes, and more recently, banditry, leaving thousands dead and many more displaced.
Usman Umar filed that report. Now, weeks after the controversial and highly contested dissolution of 40 political parties in Guinea, Article 19 is calling on authorities in Conakry to reverse the decision. The organization that promotes freedom of expression and access to information described the move as a violation of international standards on political participation and freedom of association. According to Article 19, dissolving political parties by administrative order without judicial process undermines constitutional rights and restricts the political space, especially ahead of upcoming legislative elections. The decision taken by the Ministry of Territorial Administration and Decentralization affect major opposition parties, including the UFDG, PRP, and UFR. Their activities have been banned, their offices sealed, and their assets placed under state control. Alfred Bulakali, Regional Director of Article 19, spoke to WADR.
The shock comes from the fact that by renewing with the electoral process in September of the referendum and the presidential election in March, the expectation was that Guinea restarts with an open political environment enabling citizens to enjoy diverse political expression and to express themselves about their political needs and rights through a plurality of political associations and movements. So you can take at one side steps for renewing with the election cycle, including referendum, presidential election, and upcoming legislative election in May. And at the other point, you continue to close the doors for the political plurality. Closing political party is not just closing these associations, it's also depriving citizens from the opportunity to enjoy political plurality, to express themselves in different ways within an open environment, and call on really Guinean authority to reconsider these measures and to enable citizens to associate freely without undue political and administrative interference.
Alfred Bulakali is the Regional Director of Article 19. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Niger's deposed President Bazoum's term officially ends today as he remains in detention following the 2023 coup. Civil society in Guinea-Bissau condemns the alleged murder of activist Balanta. President Tinubu of Nigeria orders reinforcement of security measures in Plateau State following renewed violence. And public outrage in Liberia as President Boakai nominates a new electoral chief, Wadr. Still ahead, we do have the press review, a guest interview, and sports update. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget to follow live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. In Mali, the transitional authorities have announced an increase in regulated fuel prices. At the pump, petrol has risen from 775 to 875 CFA francs per litre, while diesel has gone up from 725 to 940 CFA francs per litre. This increase, driven by rising global oil costs, is affecting several sectors of the country's economy. It comes at a time when Mali has been facing fuel supply difficulties for several months. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
Gasoline has risen from 775 to 875 CFA francs per litre and diesel from 725 to 940 CFA francs per litre. In the transportation sector, the situation is severely disrupting the daily lives of drivers who are forced to adapt.
La pénurie de carburant nous affecte.
The fuel shortage has hit us hard. The problem is not just rising prices. Diesel is almost impossible to find at fuel stations. We are forced to buy it on the black market where prices keep changing. We understand that inflation is a global issue, but the authorities need to consider transport operators and take measures to ease their burden.
Beyond transportation, consumer goods are also experiencing soaring prices. In this market in the capital, the impact is already being felt, according to this woman speaking on condition of anonymity.
Most of our products are imported, so any fuel shortage or price increase makes things difficult. Prices have gone up across the board, even pepper. It used to cost 250 CFA francs, but now it's 500.
While the country is experiencing economic difficulties, Malian economist Modibo Mao Makalau believes this situation could further reduce the purchasing power of the population.
If you consider that transport services, peri-urban transport and industries rely heavily on diesel, that means any increase will impact national production and also affect the purchasing power of citizens.
To address the shortage, the government has announced a subsidy of 3 billion CFA francs per month for petroleum products.
A report there by Liu Cham in Bamako and presented by Abdullah Hassan. Now, the Gambia Autism Support and Advocacy Network has held a press conference to raise awareness of autism and promote inclusion ahead of the World Autism Awareness Day. Held under the theme Autism and Humanity, Every Life Has Value, the event brought together experts to discuss ways to improve understanding and support for people living with autism and their families. From Banjul, the Badidal Sang Mendy reports.
Organizations such as Gambia Autism Support and Advocacy Network continue to use the occasion to engage the public and the media on the importance of awareness and inclusive practices The network also stressed the need for families, communities, and institutions to work together in creating an enabling environment where persons with autism can thrive. Speaking at the press conference, Awa Toure, a member of the network, underscored the importance of early awareness and community support in improving the lives of individuals on the autism spectrum.
It is a platform to amplify voices, raise awareness, and also call for stronger commitment from all sectors of society. Today we stand for the children who deserve understanding in our schools, for the parents who deserve support and recognition, and for every individual who deserves dignity, inclusion, and opportunity.
Meanwhile, organizers say the media has a critical role in shaping public perception, noting that accurate and consistent reporting can help reduce stigma while encouraging acceptance and inclusion within communities. Abdul Madi Jallo, National Coordinator of Gambia Autism Support and Advocacy Network, called for stronger collaboration between government institutions, the private sector, and families to improve support systems and advance inclusion for autistic individuals.
A call to the nation, to the government. We ask for the continued popularization of inclusive health and education policy. To the private sectors, we invite you to partner with us in building a future where every Gambian, regardless of how their brain works, and can contribute to our national development.
The day is typically marked through campaigns, discussions, and community engagements aimed at increasing public awareness about autism spectrum disorder and encourage society to become more inclusive and supportive of autistic individuals and their families. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
We'll return to Accra as we join Nadi Detete for the newspaper review.
To start off with the Daily Graphic newspaper, front page, unites to promote peace and love. Clergy charges nation at Easter. Zimbabwean President Mnangagwa arrives for 3-day visit. Damang mine transition won't affect jobs. Land Minister assures workers. And 7,000 graduate teachers to be recruited for deprived areas. The New Crusading Guide, front page, Ochehene bans home burial, task MMDCs to enforce laws. The Daily Democrat, Heath Goldfields to inject $135 million in first year of operation as new mining fleet arrives for Bogoso Prestia revival. Also here, government clears recruitment of 7,000 teachers, expands tertiary education access. The Metro Lens, inflation drops to 3.2%, lowest since 2021. The Daybreak newspaper, minority slams government over policy hitches. Public Accounts Committee summons Okoboy and Natoshi, and BEC candidates to select senior high schools after results. The BNFT, Bank of Ghana to establish 2 billion Ghana cedis price stabilization fund. Also here, Bui and Akosombo dams pressure heightens power supply concerns. FNB strengthens balance sheet with higher earnings and improved asset quality. March inflation eases slightly to 3.2%. We'll wrap up with the National Enquirer. Front page, your jobs are secure. Lands Minister assures workers of Damang mines as transition takes off. Also here, NPA goes 24 hours to drive round-the-clock downstream petroleum operations. That will be it for the newspaper review segment. Is back to you in the studio.
Many thanks, Nadia Dictator, there with the newspaper review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
In our guest interview, we focus on Liberia, where the appointment of a new Elections Commission chairperson is generating widespread reaction from cross-sections of the population. President Joseph Boakai nominated Jonathan Widow to head the electoral body after the resignation of the former chairperson of the National Elections Commission. While the 2029 elections is fast approaching, critics warn of Mr. Widow's political alignment with the ruling party. Our guest is Anderson Miamin, Executive Director of the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia Central. He speaks about the need to maintain trust in the electoral process.
Mr. Widow had served the Elections Commission for several years, and also he has played roles internationally when it comes to election governance and management. So he has the technical capabilities to serve in that position. but our concern is around his independence, his neutrality, especially so that there have been concerns in the wake of a video that has been circulating on social media from the 2023 general presidential elections in Liberia, linking him to the Unity Party and the current government. So in that video, he is seen sandwiched by other actors and one of the former chairpersons of the Elections Commission, Mr. Fromoyan, announcing results in favor of the Unity Party. So that in a way undermines his independence and neutrality. So that's why we raised concerns regarding his suitability for the role.
How could this appointment affect the independence of the Electoral Commission?
It is going to affect the independence of the Elections Commission on paper and perhaps in practice, because he's going there with a connection to the current administration. So that suspicion would be there in terms of his conduct, in terms of what happens. Maybe this is going to help in a way to make him to be very careful in terms of what he does. But that suspicion will always be there because he has an alignment with the current administration. So certain decisions he takes, even if they are based on evidence, they are based on sound reasoning, but once they appear to favor the current administration, the indications will be that he's making those decisions because of his alignment with the current administration.
The nominated elections chairperson has already taken over as acting chair, pending confirmation by the Liberian Senate. With these concerns coming out, do you believe the Liberian Senate will confirm the nominated electoral chairperson?
The Senate has a responsibility statutorily to confirm those that are appointed by the president, especially so the chairperson and other commissioners of the National Elections Commission. So we hope that they will do their due diligence, they will ask all of the hard questions, and then make a determination that will be in the best interest of the public. We have a position that others that are equally qualified and independent who have gone to the Elections Commission instead of Mr. Wadr. But it will be up to the Senate to do its due diligence, to do what it takes to ensure that they ask all of the hard questions of the chairperson of the commission, such that any decision to make will be informed by evidence and will be in the best interest of the public.
Well, Anderson Miamin is Executive Director of the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, Central. Well, in sport, the Nigeria Football Federation has officially inaugurated its Electoral Committee and Electoral Appeals Committee as part of preparations for its forthcoming elections. The ceremony took place today at the Federation Secretariat in Abuja, with NFF President Ibrahim Musa Guzal presiding over the event. In the meantime, in basketball, the Youth Academy of Senegal's Nianing Basketball Club, NBC, has once again proven itself to be a breeding ground for talent. After 3 years of steady progress on the Petit Côte, young Mo Fall is leaving the nest to head to Spain, where he will now play for the prestigious Gran Canaria club. This marks a major turning point in Mo Fall's career. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening and watching, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maudojo for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook, at WADR English. I am Imo Edit. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Radio Bath FM 90.7 91.3 Sierra Leone. In Nigeria on Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.